Hello and welcome to the Sunday Recap Podcast for Week 15. I'm Big Italy 42. He's Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. And it was a fun week in the NFL. Already, obviously not quite over yet. This is Monday morning, and we've got a Monday night game that doesn't actually matter. It matters from a DFS standpoint, but nobody, aside from Saints and Lions fans, really care who wins that game. So we'll talk about the games that did matter. Starting off the first one that you may not want to talk about, so I can take the whole talk if you want on this one. Texans and Colts. It was an ugly battle of backup quarterbacks and then more backup quarterbacks and then the backup of the backup quarterback for the Texans. Then you end up getting Brandon Weeden in there, who the Cowboys, who have no quarterbacks, didn't want, and then he ends up getting the win. And this one, I mean, there really wasn't much as far as a DFS standpoint in this one. I mean, Alfred Blue, you mentioned, had over 100 yards, but if you played Alfred Blue, I mean, you didn't deserve 100 yards.
No, I mean, he paid off his price tag, but Andy had that 100-yard DK bonus. But other than that, I mean, he didn't find the end zone, so it's kind of, I guess you could say, just because running backs were kind of low scoring this week outside of David Johnson and maybe West. So, but I mean, TJ Yates, Brandon Weeden, Matt Hasselbeck, what more could you expect? You couldn't expect any more than 26 points between the two teams.
Yeah, exactly. So pretty much TJ Yates and Brandon Weeden getting Brian Hoyer what he deserves, and that's closer to the playoffs. So we'll see him in a few weeks there. Bears and Vikings next up, and this is one that I'd rather not talk about as someone who did make the mistake of paying up for Adrian Peterson everywhere. And not that he got off to a bad start, but as soon as you see him limping off the field, we all knew he wasn't going to come back. Even if there was any shadow of a doubt that he wasn't 100%, there was no way he was coming back on the field. And, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater, the kind of guy that you scroll past as you're building your GPP lineups and you say, I'm not playing this guy because he has no upside, which is why I don't ever play Teddy Bridgewater, just showed tons of upside. And then I was watching that game, and I got to get your take on this. I can't remember what the commentator was, but he said he was talking about Teddy Bridgewater, and he described him as sweet. Would you like to be described as sweet? Especially if you're a quarterback in the NFL, you want a grown man saying, hey, Teddy's sweet.
Maybe it's because his name's Teddy and he's just a sweet quarterback. He just hands the ball off to Adrian Peterson. La la la.
He does look like a super nice guy, but still, I mean, I think I'm a pretty nice guy, and I don't want people to call me sweet either. That's an insult. So maybe he heard that. He was listening to the broadcast in his headset, and he's like, "Watch this. How sweet are these 4 touchdowns?"
Yeah, and 1 rushing touchdown.
Yeah, so 5 total. So if you paid up for Teddy, or I guess paid down for Teddy Bridgewater, it seems like the kind of one where you played a cash game lineup and it went off. That would be the kind of play that hopefully you played in a GPP there.
Yeah, or maybe it was like one of those leagues where it's Teddy Bridgewater only, and everyone can only play Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, must start Johnny Manziel lineups. But either way, and on the Bears side, I mean, really not much. Stephon Diggs, by the way, only 3 catches, but 2 touchdowns, and as he does, that last touchdown, I mean, they were both pretty impressive, but that second one, I mean, dragging defenders Rob Gronkowski style into the end zone, it was a pretty impressive one there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been the first time in a long time we've called his name, but I mean, the guy's a good player. Just obviously the offensive system doesn't really suit him just because it's a heavy run.
Yeah, exactly. And the Bears, mercifully, finally out of the playoffs. The NFC and the AFC both taking way too long to get people out of the playoffs because there's just a lot of mediocrity. But finally, the Bears don't have to listen to them being fake relevant anymore. Falcons and Jags. Somehow both these teams are still in it as well. Falcons, a hot start obviously to the season, and then looked terrible, but didn't look too bad in this one. And we saw Julio Jones, a fairly popular play for the first time in a while, I guess, as far as popular plays go. 9 for 18 and a touchdown. And I'm still a Blake Bortles fan in DFS, not a guy I would ever want on my real football team. But I did have a couple shares of Blake Bortles, and I was probably the happiest person in the world to see him go play action and run a touchdown and get me the extra 2 points rather than points.
I mean, he had 10 fantasy points just on the ground with that rushing touchdown of 44 yards. So, I mean, you kind of got bailed out a little bit if you played Bortles, but he was in a good spot anyway against this Atlanta team, and you kind of really hoped for more from Jacksonville, which they didn't deliver. But Atlanta, I mean, first time in a very long time we saw Julio Jones and Devonta Freeman actually kind of be better than average plays over the last few weeks. So Freeman had a huge workload, but against a tough Jacksonville defense, but had a pretty solid week. Definitely on DK with 7 catches for 45 yards.
Yeah, absolutely. But it seemed like Denard Robinson big disappointment, essentially. I mean, like you said, he did have some catches, but he, I don't know, in true Michigan fashion in a big game, struggled as they do. Had to get my little jab in there at Michigan. But the next game was probably the most fun to watch, and hopefully you didn't turn it off when it was 35-7. Panthers and Giants. Obviously, the big story all week was Josh Norman versus Odell Beckham, and it didn't take very long for Beckham to burn Josh Norman and then promptly drop an easy touchdown pass and get that stink eye from Eli Manning, which is one of my favorites. I still love the Phillip Rivers mean mug when people drop passes and he wants to blame everyone else. But the Eli one is a close second because the look on his face when he dropped that, it was just, I don't know how to describe it. He looked like he's having a heart attack. Like his face just twisted in such an awful way.
Yeah, I mean, something about the Mannings, their faces anyway, just,
yeah.
Yeah,
but it was a fun game, though, for sure.
It definitely was. And if you had Odell Beckham Jr., you're kind of hoping for that contrarian route. I mean, if he would have caught that first touchdown pass, I mean, he would have been in for another monster day and probably at really low ownership just because even guys like Antonio Brown and Julio Jones were the popular plays. But still, he dropped it and then was kind of held for, really the next 3 quarters until the end there.
Yeah, and then the best troll job ever. I don't know if you saw the tweet this morning from Josh Norman. He showed Odell Beckham stretching out like when
catching
he was
the L.
With the L. That was incredible. And I mean, a lot of trash talking that, lots of dirty plays really from both those guys. They're talking about fines, maybe suspensions from both of them. But I don't think either guy dominated that. I mean, Beckham got his touchdown late in the game to tie the game. Norman stopped him a couple times. But like you said, if Beckham catches that first touchdown, people would still be hating on Beckham for, being a dirty player like he was in that game. But, if he scores 2 touchdowns and has himself 110, 120 yards, then all of a sudden Josh Norman may not even be tweeting an L, but he also wouldn't be able to be talking much. But either way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've seen this before. I mean, wide receiver cornerback matchups, they go at it. It's not the first time. And sure, you want to call him dirty, but we've seen it happen to a lot of players. Andre Johnson and Finnegan from a while ago. I mean, that was a brutal one.
Oh, yeah. It is funny because Finnegan was out talking about how other players are dirty, which, I mean, yeah, right. I don't want to hear that from him. Plenty of players can comment on that. That'd be like Mike Mitchell talking about dirty secondary players. That's not going to happen. But either way, this was a fun game to watch. And my season-long teams are begging for Odell Beckham to not be suspended. So we'll see how that goes. But his odds may not be very good of avoiding that one.
I don't know. It's Sunday Night Football, so I don't know. The NFL's a little lenient.
The NFL does want viewers and money, and you're going to lose viewers and money not having Odell Beckham on the field. Titans and Patriots next up. This one, Marcus Mariota got hurt again. Looked like he injured the opposite knee than from the one he injured earlier this season. Zach Mettenberger came in, and he wasn't bad. I mean, he made a couple plays, but Delanie Walker was the playmaker in this one. We kind of always knew the Patriots were going to win. It's just a matter of by how much. And that Delanie Walker touchdown, aside from the fact that I did have a few shares, like that was incredible. Like he's easily the most underrated tight end in the league. I mean, the guy is just consistently really good every single week, and still nobody plays him.
Yeah. I mean, 2 catches this week, and both of them went for touchdowns. And like you said, that touchdown, outside of the David Johnson run from last night, that was equally as impressive, just trucking Patrick Chung and then just taking off towards the end zone. So that was fun. And as a Colts fan and always trying to watch the Patriots just kind of do stupid stuff, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the Patriots end, I mean, they were good. None of them were great. As you mentioned here, Steven Gostkowski, if you're a big FanDuel player, you love him, as you always tend to when he plays on FanDuel. Did miss 1 kick, but still did fine. But James White, that screen pass, it was the most effortless thing I've ever seen. I mean, he literally just walked 30 yards into the end zone. But, I mean, it is the Titans defense, so either way. Bills and Redskins, this one was ugly early. Bills almost made it a game late. And then, once again, it was Kirk Cousins against a bottom-tier defense at home, having a great game. So if you haven't caught on to that by now, I'm actually not sure if the Redskins have any more home games, but they still might be making the playoffs and still could potentially get a home game in the playoffs. So there's your pick for that week in the wild card round if the Redskins get in.
Yeah, I mean, how are you now rooting for Kirk Cousins right now? I mean, the guy's just fun to watch, and this team, no one thinks they can do anything, so that's always fun to watch. But I mean, this game was just unbelievable. If you actually play Kirk Cousins and then paired him up with like the only 2 guys you can possibly pair him up with, Deshaun Jackson and Jordan Reed, you're probably winning a pretty good amount of money if you made the right picks around him. And outside of that, I mean, Buffalo looked bad on offense for the first half, and really garbage time was where they made up for it, especially with Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, and LaShawn McCoy got hurt again.
Yeah.
And if you saw the Deshaun Jackson touchdown, a long touchdown, two defenders on the sideline, he jukes him and goes in. Was I the only one that was just waiting for him to get to the 1 yard line and do his old
drop the ball?
Yeah, throw the ball behind him or something arrogant, and or run along the 1 yard line until he gets tackled. But he didn't this time, which I'm glad that he's gotten past that. I'm guessing some coach at some point said, "Hey, you look like an idiot. Don't do this anymore." But I was just kind of hoping for that not top 10 moment. But either way, we didn't get it. Chalkiest defense of the week, the Chiefs dominated the Ravens, as you would expect. I mean, it's Jimmy Clausen, and it's a Ravens team that really has no weapons. But Kamar Aiken, and this was another one of the top 5 most fun plays, was that Hail Mary at the end of the first half. And when you I watched it a couple times, because obviously I was watching Red Zone channel on one of the TVs, and it comes on, you see that, and it was fun to see it live anyway. But then you realize that Aiken he runs along the sideline, and then he just kind of cut in at the last second, grabbed it, and ran past everyone. Because, I mean, where'd that go to? The 6 or 7 yard line? I mean, it wasn't anywhere near the end zone either. So it was equally impressive, just the fact that he caught it and still ran in.
Yeah, and the fact that I was complaining about the Chiefs' defense at that point, I was like, really nice effort. Like, you allowed a touchdown.
Yeah, come on, Lions, you can do better than this. But I mean, it's crazy to think. I mean, you've seen Hail Marys. I mean, you and I have been watching Hail Marys for decades, and so few of them ever work. And now we've got 2. I mean, obviously that one was a meaningless Hail Mary, just a fun DFS kind of Hail Mary. But definitely, Kamar Aiken, though, monster game for really low ownership. I think he was under 2% just about everywhere. So that was a nice call for anyone who played him there, especially against the chalky defense.
Yeah, I mean, imagine Ravens are going to be down the next 2 weeks, and he's continuing to see wide receiver 1 volume for targets. So I can't see his price jumping incredibly high over the next 2 weeks. So I think he's still a decent value play.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, pretty much the only option there in that offense. Next up, the Browns and the Seahawks, and Browns fans and Johnny Manziel truthers all freaked out after the opening drive touchdown by Johnny Manziel, saying that the Browns are going to pull the upset, and then Russell Wilson quickly gave him the throwing touchdown to Doug Baldwin, and then it was all downhill from there for the Browns, as expected. But Seahawks, I mean, no offense to Cam Newton, who had, by the way, I skipped the fact that I saw he was the first quarterback ever to have 5 passing touchdowns and 100 yards rushing, which is incredible in itself. But Russell Wilson, nobody's giving the guy any credit. I think he should easily be in the conversation for MVP, but obviously with Cam Newton being undefeated, he won't be. But, I mean, Russell Wilson is literally perfect right now.
Yeah. I mean, I can't argue with that. And you look at, I guess they both kind of do it with subpar wide receivers. So, I mean, I can't argue.
Doug Baldwin hates you for saying that. So does Ted Ginn, but I don't disagree with the Ted Ginn part.
I mean, 2 touchdowns again from Ted Ginn. That drove me crazy.
3 weeks in a row. I saw that. I was just angry at that. I mean, obviously you have to have a few shares of a guy like Ted Ginn the way that he's been playing, but I mean, he's you can't fade the guy right now at his price the way he's playing.
I'll continue to fade, and I'll continue to complain about it.
And that's fair. Consistency is key. But Doug Baldwin did not get 3 touchdowns in this, in case you were wondering.
Just 2.
He only had 2. So maybe next week he'll get back to where he belongs, back in the 3 touchdown range. But I mean, he's all of a sudden having a ridiculously good season, and people are still not giving him credit or still not playing him in their cash games. So just stop not doing that.
Yeah. I mean, the other note here, Christine Michael came back to Seattle and jumped ahead just right into that number 1 running back role. Saw 16 carries, 84 yards. So, I mean, going to be a cheap play the next 2 weeks, I guess. You got to anticipate Seattle just being ahead and still getting a full workload to their running backs. So, could be a decent value plays for week 16 and 17.
Yeah, it looks like DraftKings bailed everyone out by not having Bryce Brown in the player pool for this week, just in case. Because I know I would have taken a couple shots. Me and Denny were talking about on the slate breakdown, kind of lamenting the fact that we couldn't throw our money away. But shout out to DraftKings. Thanks for saving me some dollars by not having him in there. Packers and Raiders next up. This one wasn't pretty. And I mean, if you're someone who has heavily invested in Aaron Rodgers really at any point this season, aside from that Carolina game, I mean, really hasn't been worth his tag at all. Still getting wins and when he needs to, and the Packers are still doing just fine, of course. But really, I mean, from a DFS standpoint, he's just not a guy that's worth playing right now.
No, I mean, he continues to be priced over, and especially with guys like Cam Newton who have just delivered 4+ touchdowns week in and week out. I mean, there's no sense in using Rodgers, especially with all the value that we've seen this season. And he's just not in sync with his receivers. I mean, it's been tough to watch. Outside of James Jones, I mean, there's even Randall Cobb, there's been no one even worthy of pairing him with.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the Raiders side, we saw Amari Cooper have himself another monster game. Derek Carr, the first quarter looked awful. I mean, he looked lost, throwing a terrible interception, couldn't move the ball at all, and then realized Amari Cooper has a size advantage over pretty much everyone in the entire world. So let's go ahead and take advantage of that. And I didn't have any shares of Amari Cooper, but I feel like every week that I don't have any shares, those are the weeks he goes for his 2 touchdowns. So maybe I should learn my lesson on that one.
Or just let me know when you don't take him so I can take him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to look and see his matchup for next week. But Raiders also officially eliminated from the playoffs. Not that you were holding your breath for a Raiders playoff berth this year anyway, but certainly they're getting better. They're getting much better, but still a couple steps away. So they're doing moving, what the Browns were hoping they could do.
They're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, certainly, especially on offense. Next up, Broncos, Steelers, and as a Bengals fan, I was conflicted on this one. Obviously, much hatred for the Steelers, but I'm thankful that they did pull this one out because it helped the Bengals as far as the home field goes in the first round bye, everything. But this one was a story of two halves. I mean, first half, Broncos looked great on defense, great on offense. Brock Osweiler all of a sudden looked like, I'm not going to give him too much credit after I saw that second half, but he looked very good in the first half, a couple touchdown passes, and then the second half the Steelers did what the Steelers do, and that's dominate defenses with Antonio Brown right in your face, and you know the ball's going to Antonio Brown, and they continue to get it to him, and you cannot stop it.
No, I mean, it's sick to watch. I mean, he matchup proof. It doesn't matter who's playing him. I mean, the guy just dominates teams, and 16 catches for 189 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, if he went, I mean, I didn't see too many people on him. I mean, he was still relatively popular, but not as much as previous weeks. You definitely extended yourself from the field with him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So he was an absolute monster, and you did see Ben Roethlisberger throw that late interception, which, I mean, the look on his face. I'm not a Ben Roethlisberger fan anyway, but I almost felt bad for him. Like when he realized he almost gave the game away, but then he realized Brock Osweiler couldn't even complete a pass in the second half hardly, so certainly wasn't going to throw a touchdown. And it was not pretty for the Broncos there at the end. And I was looking at the playoff scenarios, and it's a possibility that the Broncos could, best case, still get a first round bye, or worst case, not even make the playoffs. I mean, it's a far-fetched scenario, but from 10-2 and beating the Patriots a couple weeks ago to now, it's possible that if things don't fall their way, they could miss out completely. I mean, it's going to be hard it's a lose-lose situation for them deciding who's going to play quarterback next week, assuming that Peyton's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, because the way Manning has looked all season, you can't really expect much, and same with Osweiler with his second half performance.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, but I don't feel bad for that situation. They can figure it out. They'll be all right. Dolphins and Chargers, the battle of two of the biggest disappointments of the season. And the Chargers actually looked like a competent offense again this weekend. If you played Danny Woodhead, I don't know why you played Danny Woodhead, but great call, because I didn't even consider Danny Woodhead this week, and I obviously should have. I mean, he just had a monster game, and the narrative didn't work out for Malcolm Floyd, but the narrative worked out for San Diego in what was probably their final game in San Diego, and they certainly made their fans happy one last time as they move their way towards a top pick next year.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I wouldn't have played so much Lamar Miller if I knew it was the last game in San Diego, because obviously that's what really helped him. It wasn't the bad coaching staff or the injuries, I guess you could say, Lamar Miller had, but oh my God, just end this season.
Yeah, that was 100% your fault. Bad decision. Never do that again. Yeah, it was not much to see here. Neither one of these teams is relevant. If you had Danny Woodhead or Phillip Rivers, you did well. If you didn't, this game was irrelevant to you pretty much. Bengals and 49ers. Bengals surprisingly had no success running the football, but Jeremy Hill was able to get about 6 feet at a time a couple times and get 2 touchdowns. So if you had some Jeremy Hill, which I had, of course, he bailed you out with the 2 touchdowns, but not an efficient day on the ground at all. I mean, I think he had a yard and a half per carry, something like that. But either way, Bengals did what they needed to do, control the clock enough, win the game, etc. But outside of that, I mean, it was not a pretty game. You didn't want a lot of exposure. Right before the game, they said not Andy Dalton, AJ Green was questionable with the back injury, caught 1 long pass, and then just pretty much sat out the second half.
Yeah, I mean, you can't expect the injury to be too bad. I think he would have played if the game would have mattered. You just figure against San Francisco and with their defense and them running the ball, not effectively, but they did run the ball and run some clock. He could take a seat for the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Cardinals and Eagles, this one, we saw quickly Arizona got a lead. The Eagles made it a game for a few minutes at least, and then the second half was just brutal. I mean, John Brown, biggest disappointment. Everyone talking, wishing bad things on him on Twitter, whatever. I mean, he still didn't have a horrible game necessarily, but could have had a very big game had he not dropped a couple passes.
Just keep going. I don't want to talk about it.
Either way, I guess essentially a bigger disappointment relative to salary was Carson Palmer, who the team wins by 23. Yeah, I mean, they score 40 points, win by 23, but that's how good the attack is, and that's how good David Johnson was. The Carson Palmer only needed the 1 touchdown pass, and he still gave you a decent floor, but this was the one game where everyone was finally saying Palmer now finally has that big upside where he hasn't needed it before, but David Johnson was just absolutely tremendous again, and if you had shares of him, I think he was the highest scoring player aside from Cam Newton, or the highest scoring non-quarterback this week, he and Antonio Brown. So, if you had those two on the lineup, you didn't need a whole hell of a lot else from everyone else in that one.
No, I mean, 189 yards on the ground, 3 scores, 29 carries. He's been a workhorse, over the last 2 weeks, but this week, 29 carries was kind of something I didn't expect. Also caught 4 balls for 42 yards and channeled his inner beast mode with one of those 40-plus yard runs there where he just smoked. I don't remember who it was, but
all of them.
Oh yeah, pretty much. It was like a bowling ball and just took it to the house.
Yeah, it was a great performance by him. And on the Eagles side, if you had Zach Ertz, you did well. But really, the best non-Zach Ertz play on the Eagles side was to play the other team, as it usually is. So it's not a pretty situation in Philly, but by default, by result of the NFC East being so horrible, it's still possible we see them in the playoffs, and I hope we do, so that I can just play a ton of players from whoever they're playing in the first round and make myself some easy money in the playoffs there.
Yeah, I think I saw someone on Twitter say that last night's game didn't even matter, but as long as they won the next 2 games, they were going to win the NFC East.
Yeah,
so,
which is disgusting, but someone's going
to.
Yeah, work on that playoff structuring, and then give the NBA some notes on it too for the Eastern Conference. Either way, that wraps things up for us for this week. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out the rest of our content at dailyfantasycafe.com.